Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hot Pole Podcast, a very thrown together, kludgy version of the podcast. I'm your host, Adam Steele, and joining me is Liam Wright. Hello!
Hello!
And greetings from sunny Spain. I'm on holiday, and I'm actually, this is the most kludged system ever, so if the camera keeps stopping and starting and stuttering, that's going to be expected. I'm actually using my phone as a camera. I'm using the inbuilt microphone on the laptop, and I'm using these Bluetooth in-ears to hear Liam without squealing feedback. So I've managed to kludge it together. I am outside because it's sunny Spain. Hello, everybody.
We should have thought this through, and I should have done the stream.
Well, the bandwidth isn't the problem; it's the hardware.
Even so, because it is very a bit.
Yeah, well, my original plan was this laptop has an inbuilt webcam, but it just refuses to work. And then I tried to use this phone with a USB connection using the OBS camera app. That refused to work. So now it's using NDI as a broadcast.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about the overall stream on YouTube. Like, both me and you are quite robot-y.
Quite laggy, are we?
Yeah.
Well, we made it work.
Maybe I'm all right, actually. I don't know.
You should be absolutely fine. It's me that's a bit of a mess because the inbuilt mics. My original plan was to bring a USB mic, and I forgot. And the other plan was to have a decent camera, and I'm on plan C. So we made it happen. It's fine. Hope you're doing well. A lot of my day today has been preparation for Nam. So yes, all the logistics, trying to get the right companies to talk to us with meetings. And yes, it turns out we're going to be going to the Hollywood Artist Expo the day before now. Indeed. And yes, Mage says I'm broadcasting from the moon, which is about right. Because, NDI is, apparently it tells me it's connected to 4 clients, which is patently untrue, but it's doing something. So, yes, via satellite, hello. Yes, and first announcement this week is that the podcast cannot be on Thursday next week because NAMM isn't open yet. So it looks like we're going to be broadcasting from NAMM on the Fridays, a Friday special.
Ooh.
Yes, because Friday's the first official day of NAMM, so we've got a meeting with 2 notes. Then we're going to do the podcast. Then I have meetings with people from AEA, Austrian Audio, Cloud, Microphones. Friday's a pretty busy day. In fact, it's a very busy day. And I've not even got everybody booked in yet. But that means that, it's going to be a lot. And so, we're going to bring all the latest news to you. Marty says I'm seriously running the risk of getting a tan. Yes. Well, the image on screen is quite desaturated. I actually have kind of a red glow about me. But not a lobster pink glow, which is good. So, yes. It's been good. It's been good to get away and have a few quiet days. But yes, there is a pre-wedding tomorrow, and then the pre-game is tomorrow, and then the full wedding is on Saturday. So that's going to keep me busy. And so I'm drinking a beer where it's €1 for like 2 pints, which is ridiculous compared to England. And just relaxing by the pool, mostly. So, yes, without further ado, there's a lot of latency. So if we do talk over each other, I apologize in advance. That's going to happen. So, yes, let's talk about the news.
The news.
Poor laptop isn't coping. There's no GPU in this thing. It's going, please kill me. So, yes, big news to begin with. The news came through typically about 3 hours after the finish of last week's podcast. Korg have bought Darkglass, essentially. So, this is a very interesting move, I think. Korg are one of the major players, and they own a lot of companies. But Darkglass are now their leading kind of bass gear brand. They acquired a majority interest, so even though they don't own it outright, they own enough of it that they own it. Still there?
Yeah, I muted myself and was agreeing with you, and then realised you couldn't hear
cool.
me.
Cool. So yes, the thing that's interesting about this is the owner of Darkglass, Doug Castro, is also the owner of Neural DSP. So he's got had two companies, and he sold the company that purely makes physical equipment. So I think that's quite telling that he's not sold a majority interest in the software company where the revenue is. Because let's be honest, you're not held back by supply chain on software. You're not worried about the cost of components on software. So yeah, I think it's been very shrewd there to kind of sell off his business to a company that do hardware and do the whole thing of moving physical units. But he's kept hold of his IP and kept hold of the majority stake in the company that makes software and make a lot of money doing it, I assume. Because Neural DSP make all the amp sims that are selling like hotcakes. They also make the Quad Cortex, which is a physical unit, but that's not their only product. They make a lot more software products than they do hardware. So yeah, I think it's very interesting. And so the quote from Doug is, having worked with Korg USA for many years and seeing firsthand their incredible work empowering brands that have joined their group, I do not doubt that they will help fulfill all these ambitions and beyond, which is very CEO speak. But what I think that kind of means is, you have it. You're good at this stuff. You have it. I mean, any company in the last 3 years that makes hardware has probably suffered, and the writing's on the wall for a lot of physical, hardware makers that trying to find components at all, let alone for a reasonable price, is difficult right now. And there are some companies where they just can't make a product anymore because they just can't get the parts. But I think if you're as big as someone like Korg, they've got the leverage to go to the component manufacturers and say, you are making these for me. Whereas the big factories will go, sorry, Darkglass who? Whereas they go, oh, Korg. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that there is definitely something to that. They also have Aguila, which is a notable, and Spectre, which are notable bass brands, as well as Vox and ARP are all owned by Korg. So it's not as if they're a small company. They've got a lot more than just the keyboardy stuff. Yeah. So I was going to reach out to Darkglass and see if I could get an Exponent E500, but now they're part of a much bigger company. I'll have to reevaluate that and see what their stance is on doing review videos as a Vox company. We'll see. It could be the complete opposite. Yeah, it could be the complete opposite way round, that Vox, with a PR arm and a marketing arm, might be much more receptive to stuff like that. So we'll see. But yes, that was big news this week. Another piece of big news that we've been part of is the Evo 16 by Audient. Empowering creators. Empowering seems to be the word this week, the buzzword this week, with a 24 by 24 interface. Well, up to 24. But this thing is a monster. And if you've not seen our video where we do a drum and bass cover with, a drum and bass song with our friend Neil, and talk about what this thing can do, it's really interesting for its price point.
Yeah, it's very cool. It looks sick as well, I'm not going to lie. Does it run off USB-C?
The data does. It's powered off an IEC kettle lead.
Right, okay, so you can't take this out with you then?
No, not without some sort of generator. I mean, the power requirements for something this big are pretty high, because it's just got too much stuff to run off USB unless we start talking like USB PD specs, which would probably bump the price up a lot. And for most people would be really complicated and they wouldn't understand it. But it is rack mountable, so I think a lot of people are going to be putting these in travel racks. So I mean, unless you are some weirdo like us, you're probably going to be inside somewhere near a main socket when you record. And we've done the videos about recording in a field and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But yeah, if we're talking like full drum kit and stuff, you probably either getting a generator or finding some other way of doing this, because that's a lot. But yeah, it's got 8 mic preamps in that all use the smart gain feature where you hold the green button down and then you play and make noise, and it just does the volume for you, which is clever. The Evo preamps do 58 dB of gain, which isn't a massive amount, but is more than enough for most things. It's got double ADAT or SPDIF on in and out, so it's got 16 in, 16 out digitally, so it's 24 channel. It's got it doesn't have rack ears. You can register the unit and ask Audient, can I have some rack ears, and they'll send them you for free. From what they were saying to me, they decided to do that because something like 80 or 90% of people who buy these things are not going to use it racked up, which means that would be pieces of metal that they're just wasting, essentially, and just environmental impact as well as cost. It seems silly. So instead, they said, you know what, if you ask us, we'll happily send them to you. Otherwise, we're going to keep the cost down by just not. So
it's a little bit annoying, but yeah, understandable.
Yeah, I mean, if you know that, you can order one and the same day be like, hey, can I get these? Because, yeah, like I say, they'll send them to you. But I think they said they worked out that the postage of these per unit, it still costs them a lot less than it would to just throw them in every box. Because, metal is not cheap.
No, it's not cheap, especially at the moment.
It's really not. No. So yeah, this thing's kind of a beast. It can be an entire studio's worth of brain. It's got a really clever screen on it as well, where you can see all 8 channels of what's going on. But if you touch one of the channels, it comes up with a big number for the gain and 1 meter for that channel. So it's nice and simple, and then it goes back to the 8 channels again. And yeah, 2 separate headphone amps, which you can have separate mixes for. Almost all of it is completely controllable off the unit using the screen as well, which is really clever. It's got Talkback in it, so if you've got headphones, you can send Talkback to them and actually use the button on the interface to do Talkback rather than having to buy any more gear. Although, if you want to buy more gear, you can use something like a Stream Deck to activate that. So, if you want to do that, you can do that. And yes, if you want to know more about it, watch our video about it, because it's a good video, I think. I'm proud of it, and it's there on our channel. So
it is a very cool video. Yeah, I enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, good stuff. I was very enthusiastic. But yes, I've not been able to talk about it on the channel, which has been quite annoying. But it's something I've been beta testing with Audient for months, which is why it's been quite frustrating that I've not been able to talk about it, because we've been doing things like finding little bugs in the system, and because that happens on beta tests and pre-release units, that's the whole point of a beta test, is you poke it and prod it and find things and just look for weirdnesses. Like if I press this button 3 times, turn around in a circle and do a little dance, will it crash? And yeah, so the main thing that I came up with is something that's been unintentionally an issue with Audient drivers on Windows, which is that if you change the sample rate on the Audient Windows drivers, then it has a hissy fit and it goes, I don't like this, and so causes problems. And so it ends up fighting with Windows, trying desperately to fight back and forth as to what's got sample rate. So I got them to change that entire thing. So now, because, I mean, I've got an RME device in the studio, and the way that works is if you change the sample rate on the RME device, it basically deletes all the Windows audio and then puts it back again at only the right sample rate.
Okay.
So there's no way for Windows to get confused because it's got one option, and that's the option that the device is already set at. So I said to Audient, this is brilliant. Can you do this? And they went, sure. And now all the problems are going to go away, hopefully, with the Windows trying to fight. Because that's it. It's done. So, yeah. I tried and hopefully succeeded in solving a problem for lots of people. Because it's the kind of thing where I said it to the development team, and they went, you know what? Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it. And they did it. So there you go.
Very cool.
There were a few, more slightly more.
In terms of value for money, is there anything that comes close to it?
Oh, well, the Focusrite Scarlett 18i20 comes close. They're now fighting neck and neck in that price range. I think that the Audient has the edge, but that's the price bracket, and that's what it's fighting with. That's its biggest competitor, because that can do roughly the same number of channels, I believe, of audio. It doesn't have all the funky smart gain stuff. It doesn't have what I think is the Audient kind of quality preamps. But a lot of people know the Big Red. They go with Focusrite because their friends have gone with Focusrite, and so that's the closest thing. And it's a tricky one because Focusrite, they're a good company and they've got some good people. And I think the Scarlett line, or is it the Sapphire line? No, it's the Scarlett line. I think the Scarlett line is hot garbage. And that's not because Focusrite are a bad company. I think it's because they wanted to make something at a price point and still turn a decent profit. And my personal opinion is they've cut some corners where they probably shouldn't have. Whereas the Claret range is really good, but then the price of that is so much higher that it prices a lot of people out, which is tricky. But yes, like I say, there are good people at Focusrite. So I don't want to say that they're terrible people or anything like that, but out of the two companies, the Audient guys seem to be making the best stuff at the price points with all the really good, useful features. So there you go.
I really like them. I just like the design of them as well. I just think they look like really slick, like clean, but cool. Just nice.
Everything is incredibly intuitive. That's the thing. Like, if you want to turn up the monitors, you hit the picture of the monitors and then you turn the knob up. And the same with turning one of the channels up or turning the headphones up or anything like that. You just look for a button, press the button, turn the knob. And yeah, you can really dive into some technical menus and stuff on the device without going crazy, but it's all there for you apart from the really, really deep stuff, which is still available. So yeah, that's the thing. Like, there are other devices you can get that have little screens and menus and stuff, but you're talking at least £1,000, euros, at least to get to that level. We're talking like Antelope Audio level, Universal Audio level, where it's a different price class, it's a different fight. And Audient have brought that technology to the budget conscious class, and that's big. So there you go. All right, moving on. There we go. Big delay. Sorry, I'm on the moon. This is one that caught my eye. I'm halfway down the article because I was reading it earlier. Soundwide, who are the company who have Native Instruments and Ozone and Plugin Alliance and all that kind of stuff that we talked about recently, have just released Mastering Studio. So free mastering, cheap distribution, and you get the royalties. So they're really kind of barging in on the territory of people like DistroKid by letting you do mastering online with the whole kind of AI-based thing. It's $20 a year, which is competitive with DistroKid. Gives you 100% of royalties, which is very similar. And the mastering is kind of the BX style creator app, which I checked out earlier, which seemed really interesting. It wasn't very pretty, but it seemed incredibly apt for, like, if you have a mix and you go, my mix is this, I'm in this genre, make me sound good. It's one of those things where it gets there pretty quick. And yeah, if you want 16-bit 44K, which is CD quality, it's free mastering for an unlimited number of tracks. If you want higher quality, like I work at 48K 24-bit, or you want to go above that, then you do have to pay, but that option's there. And so, yes, it looks very similar to DistroKid. Now, the article goes on to say, can it really be? Can they really keep this? You know, can they make money doing this, basically? And I'm thinking, look, DistroKid, they do this. They make money hand over fist at this price point. If they can do it, then Soundwide can do it. If they can get enough traction, get enough people over to their platform, they can absolutely make money off this, because $20 a year doesn't sound like a lot, but if you get 10,000 people signed up, that's $200,000 a year. And that's just the start.
That's pretty decent.
Yeah.
Pretty damn.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the gift that keeps on giving as well, because if it's on a yearly basis and you've committed yourself to this platform, you commit yourself. If you're an artist, you don't just hop between, usually, unless there's some real complaint. I mean, once you've got a submission platform, the only reason that I can think of for going to a different platform then is either you've signed to a major label, which is a very small minority of cases, or you've got some real niche case need, like I've been reading up on supplying immersive audio like Dolby Atmos to Apple, and you need to jump through a million hoops to do that, which this platform probably does not support. So yeah, there is that. But most cases, if you've signed up for this and you like it, you're probably going to stay with it. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it seems very cool. Another thing that I got a little message from my friends at Two Notes saying, don't tell anyone about this, it's really cool, but don't tell anyone. I was like, ah! So they've now announced the Revolt guitar and bass tube-driven amp sim pedals, which don't have a L in the name. It's not Le Revolt. They've dropped the L from the names, like the old Le Crunch and Le Clean and Le Lead. Because as funny as that was, I think a lot of people didn't get it.
Man, I'm I'm not sure whether the audio is too delayed, but the YouTube stream is just so far behind you that I'm like, I want to see this thing. I'm still on the last article. Oh, there we go.
Can you not
okay, now I see it.
I was going to say, can you not see it on Discord?
No, Discord just has a blankness.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, it's just a picture of your face.
Oh, that's weird, because you should be getting the OBS virtual camera. Let me just have a look at that. No, he no worky. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. So, yes, these things are cool. They do more than the old Le Preamp series do. They are 3 channels. So instead of there being a variation where you would buy a clean one, buy a crunch one, or buy a lead one, there is a guitar one, and there is a bass one. And I am really, really excited about these. Marty says, preamp-wise, does it beat the Apollo stuff? I haven't heard these yet, so I couldn't tell you for sure, but I did hear the UAE, the new preamps, and they really impressed me, which means that these pedals have a lot to fight against. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that these are probably on par with the new Universal Audio. The 56 and the 60 was the Woodford, and there were 3 new pedals that they released this week on the build-up to NAMM. But the difference here, if these sound as good, then I'm absolutely sold, because it's 3 completely different amp types in a single pedal, where the UAD ones were one really good amp in one pedal. Now, the UAD ones will probably appeal to someone who just goes on a show and uses one amp, which I can see that being an appeal. But this, I mean, I think it was the guitar one was a clean, I think it was a Fender Bassman for the clean. Fender Bassman, Marshall JMP Super Lead for the crunch, which I've got one of, and they are amazing. And a Soldano SLO 100 for the lead, which I wish I had, because they're $3,500. And that's a lot.
Ooh.
And yes, I mean, the Mesa Dual rectifier that I have is loosely based on an SLO 100, so hey, it's got that kind of lineage. But yes, it's very cleverly laid out. It uses a real valve in the path, so like the old Le Preamp series, it's got that actual valve thing going on. And it's got MIDI in and out, so you can switch between the channels remotely. Or you can send out commands. So if you've got something like a Strymon delay or reverb or something, you can get that to kick on or change its preset as you change amps. And when you're on one of the channels, you kick that channel again, and it'll boost that channel. So you can use the crunchy channel with a bit of something else, or the clean channel with a bit of a bump, etc., etc. And there's a lot of variety in that. It's got inbuilt cab sim, but it's kind of not great, but because it's an analog cab sim, but it's there if you need it. But the idea, I think, for a full turnkey solution is either stick this into the back of whatever guitar amp is on the stage wherever you are, or use something like a 2 notes cab M and then use that straight to front of house. So you've got all the options there. The one that really, really, really excites me is the Revolt Bass, because this thing's a monster. So it's the same size. It's got 3 different bass amps in it. It's got an Ampeg SVT, which is one of the best clean sounds probably ever. A Marshall 92 JMP Super Bass, which is a very mean sounding bass amp. And it's got a mean, angry. And then there's the Modern Drive, which is kind of it's a dry-wet blend between kind of a thick low end and also a very angry top end, from what I am told. So very different between the Vintage Dirt and the Modern Drive. So if these sound anything like I imagine them to sound, that, plus maybe a compressor at the start and the cab M at the end, is my live rig done. Because that covers pretty much everything I would want out of a show, unless we start talking beardy weirdy effects, which would very much be kind of a per show thing. Because beardy weirdy effects, I used to have a board full of weirdo pedals, and I used to get told off by guitarists. So yeah.
Can you change the valves within these things?
Can you change the valve? Yeah. Apparently you can, and it's dead easy.
Have you done it on yours?
But I've done it on one of them. Made 0 difference. To my ears, anyway. Because I mean, I've had this discussion before with preamp valves, and the idea is they're supposed to work within a specification. So if you change one out for another one, it's supposed to do the same thing. It's like changing different brands of unleaded petrol. It's like, you might prefer one brand over another, but they do the same thing.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, there might be some subtleties in there, but once you've got a drummer bashing away, any subtleties are gone. Let's be honest. Yeah. I mean, they're not cheap. They're at $399 or euros for one of these. So if you're buying one, you are kind of serious about it. But for the size of it, and hopefully for the sound quality of it, it's done. So that can be a fly rig that rivals anything, really, because it is all analog. So, yeah, unlike a lot of the digital amp sims, which I do like some of them, there is still something to be said for real analog circuits, and yeah, using this into something like the cab M, which your cab modeling benefits from a digital brain. Between them, if this stands up to scrutiny, then yeah, we're good. I'm the most excited. Friday morning at the Two Notes booth at NAMM, I'm going to be digging into a bass and trying the Revolt. And if I grin like an idiot, then you know it's good. Because that's the thing. If I listen to it and go, okay, that's a bass sound, I can get half decent bass sound out of anything. But if I'm digging in and going, oh, then we know it's good. So yes, we will see. Just after this time next week, we'll find out. Now, moving on to something else that really piqued my interest. This is one that really caught my eye. This is Sound ID Reference, which is basically what Sonarworks' name has been renamed to, for multi-channel. So surround sound setups can now be Sonarworks, to use a phrase. Because that's been a kind of an issue with Sonarworks up until now, is that it's great, but if you've got anything other than a stereo pair of speakers, you couldn't use it. So, yeah, they've changed it so that if you've got a 5.1 system you're working on, 7.1, Dolby Atmos, it says here, like for the example, says 9.1.4, you can use Sonarworks to calibrate the whole room, which to me, that's massive. Because what that means to me now is I can get 7 speakers that match and 4 that match for height and the sub. And I can turn our studio into a workable Atmos studio. So
what does that mean?
That means that I can calibrate our control room, so I can work on full 3D surround sound and know that it sounds reliable enough that I can send it to somebody and it's not going to sound like poop.
Right, okay.
Because yeah, Sonarworks is something I rely on in the studio on a day-to-day basis because it corrects for the room and the speakers to make it kind of flat. But I'm in the background kind of planning on doing stuff with 3D and surround sound at the moment. And if the speakers can't be calibrated to the room, then you've either got to have one of the best rooms money can buy, or you've just got to kind of wing it. And if I can not wing it and know confidently that things sound good, then I'll be much happier. So if I can get half decent monitor speakers, small ones for like $100 each, 7 and 4 is what, $1,100. Yeah, $1,100 ish. I could probably get a half workable full 3D surround sound system in the control room.
Oh, okay.
For the kind of amount of money that isn't stupid, because traditionally to do that kind of thing as a studio engineer, you'd probably use Genelecs, and those speakers tend to be $1,000 each in the mid-range.
Right.
Times for a 7.1.4 system, which is the minimum for Atmos, that is, what's the number? 11 times $1,000, 11,000. Plus, you need the room to be absolutely perfect. That makes it untenable for most people. So, this is a big deal for me because it brings it into the realm of possibility. Yeah, so it does up to 9.1.6 Atmos systems, which is a little overkill, but it's nice that it does it. Yes. Oh, if you've got Avid and DSP hardware. It'll do it at 0 latency as well, which is cool, but I'll probably just use the software version. But that's good to know. It's not a cheap upgrade, but it's also not an expensive upgrade. $500 or €500 for multi-channel sound ID, but then they're not going to sell as many of these, so they do have to sell, a significant number of these. On a related note, I've been talking to the company Dear Reality this week, who make Dear VR Mix and Dear VR Monitor, and I might be playing around with their plugin Dear VR Pro, which allows me to take mono and stereo sounds and throw them around in a 3D space in a really kind of intuitive, intelligent way.
Right.
So, yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun to play with, and that's going to happen at some point fairly soon. I mean, Mike, we never finished the Mayseto mixes on the channel, so I might go back and finish one of those and then make it a 3D song. Because that'd be
interesting.
Yeah. Oh, so my article's got kind of backwards, but the Universal Audio, we were talking about the preamps. This is the news article about them. The Ruby, Woodrow, and Dream amp sim pedals from Universal Audio. So these don't have any real valve tubes in at all. These are entirely modeled. The Woodrow is based on a very early Fender amp. The Dream is based on a 10 years later Fender Deluxe. And the Ruby is based on a Vox AC30. And I heard the Andertons demo video of these before, and I was really quite shocked with how realistic they sounded. So, yeah, that's impressive. And yeah, if you use these as preamps and aren't relying on them for the power stuff, there is what they call the 4-cable method, where you can get one of these pedals and stick it in the effects return of your amp. But the 4-cable method means that when you click the off button, it goes back to using your own amp's inbuilt channel. So you can have a choice of both, which is very clever. The 2-notes pedals do that as well. The 4-cable method is becoming more and more popular as a technique, where if you've got an amp that's got a very specific sound that doesn't work for everything, you can wire it up in such a way that you've got a completely different preamp that you kick on for the other sounds that you want, and then kick it back off and you get your amp's unique sound again. So yeah, you can keep that kind of validation thing of having the weird, unique boutique amp that you bought, but also sometimes have that staple. And so yeah, choice is good. There is an app apparently that can control some of the more detailed stuff in these amps, which I would imagine you would toy with, hit save, and not touch again, especially during a show. But yeah, from what I heard, I was very impressed with these. Yes.
Pretty cool.
And indeed. Moving on. Oh, hello. I had an article then that just seemed to close itself because this computer is awkward. Where are you? Cherry Audio Lowdown. There we go. So this made me smile because it's basically a Moog Taurus, which is one of my favorite bass pedals. If you've seen the Rush Tom Sawyer video that I did, I used bass pedals which were kind of roughly trying to emulate this. But the synth that it used wasn't an exact clone. No, because that song hijacked a different synth. But a lot of songs that use foot pedals use one of these, a Moog Taurus, which has a very specific rumble of a bass sound. There are a lot of songs where you use this, and as soon as you kick it on, because suddenly everybody's bowels move. And I used to have a free VST plugin that kind of did what the Taurus does, but was never quite the same. And this is $25, and if it absolutely nails the Taurus sound, then I think I'm going to buy it, because Arturia currently don't make a Taurus, but they've got pretty much everything else nailed. This is one of those few things where I would like one, but I ain't got it, so I'm going to get it for $25. Absolutely, why not? Now, where were we? Rode announced the Roadcaster Pro 2. So this thing yes. Yeah, so our friend Stu from the Warrior Collective has the Mark 1 of this. And my mate John Brown from Monuments has one of these too, the Mark 1.
Oh, and that thing, not the... This is the podcast, not the... Yeah.
Yeah, not the microphone, the big black block in the middle. So, yes, this thing is very powerful indeed. It looks like they've changed the screen to be a lot clearer and kind of tilted up, so that you can see it without craning your neck and looking like a confused chicken, doing all that kind of, an owl scoping out its prey, just trying to look at the screen. So let's see what it's got. Apparently it's got better preamps. I thought the other ones were pretty good, actually. Dual USB ports. I wonder why you want a second one, maybe to plug a phone in or something, or have a second copy of the audio. I don't know. Yeah, let's have a look. So, yes, the original Roadcaster Pro was a raving success over the lockdown when people were doing podcasts from home and for other things, because it does work for that as well as being in person. It's fairly foolproof. Looks like the new preamps are better with quiet microphones, 76 dB of gain, like the SM7B that everybody uses for podcasting. And in my home setup, I've gone back to it because it does a thing and does it well. And so, yes, you can connect guitars and synths, apparently, which is a thing. The 8 faders with fixed assignments have been replaced with 6 faders and 3 virtual faders, whatever that means. But apparently, whatever you choose those to be, it will stick with, which makes more sense. If you only use certain setups, let's say like you only use 2 microphone inputs and you want the other faders to do other stuff, there's no point in having 2 just completely dead faders all the time. Yeah, screen's bigger. It's got a rotary encoder, so apparently it's easier to navigate. So you can connect 2 computers to it at the same time. Main interface works as 2-in 16-out multi-channel or 2-in 2-out, and the second one is 2-in 2-out. I guess you could record a backup or stream from a second computer whilst managing with a main one. I don't know, but that's kind of a clever feature to have. There's an Ethernet port and Wi-Fi connectivity as well. So I guess you could do more things with that. Very clever. Color-coded headphone outputs. Integrated. It's got 4 gigabytes of internal memory in case you want to use music beds and sound effects and stuff. Yeah, very clever. Not something I need, but for a lot of people, I can see this flying off the shelves. Yeah. Now, a couple more things. So Pulsar, who made some very cool plugins, including an 1178 plugin in the past, have now basically completely copied the Massive Passive by Manly Labs, which is an EQ that in real life I've wanted for many, many years, but haven't had because they're nearly $7,000. It's kind of a Pultec, but with more controls and a stereo one at that, with an incredibly low noise floor, which means it's very musical, very broad. It's one of those EQs where you can't really tell that something's been EQ'd unless it's used very, very, very judiciously. It just makes things kind of sound nicer and you don't know why, which for a lot of EQs is a very desirable trait. You kind of want things to just sound finished is probably the word I would use. And so there have been plenty of copies of passive EQs in software before, but Pulsar reckon that they've got very, very close. So yeah, it's an unofficial one, and it's got this FFT at the top, so you can see what you're doing to the waveforms, which may help, may hinder, but there is a switch, so you can turn that off and not see it, of course. But yeah, it's a 4-band passive EQ, and if it sounds as good as I think it should, I mean, it's going to use a fair bit of CPU to do it right, but if it does it right, then I don't care. But it's on sale right now for €89, so probably 80 quid, $100, which is absolutely worth checking out. Like the high band, they go up to 27 kilohertz, which is kind of ridiculous, but makes sense because the way that these super big, broad EQ sweeps work, even if it's at 27k, it's going to pull everything below that up gently, which can be exactly what you want.
Right.
So yeah, that's the kind of thing. Is people who've not used one say stuff like, "Oh, you'll never hear 27k," and it's like, yeah, that's the point. Is that's where the midpoint is, which means everything below that gets a very gentle lift. So everything just sounds a little brighter, but doesn't sound nasty, and you don't really know why. So it's kind of magic. Yes. Yeah. Apparently, Mage said, I saw that Glenn loved it, so yeah, I'll talk to Glenn about it, because we are staying with Glenn next week, so I'll be like, hey, Glenn, what do you think? That thing. And he'll be like, oh yeah, it's great, because that's what he does. And last but not least, our friends at Austrian Audio. I've been using their OC818 microphone more and more recently, because it's one of those microphones where it's not got a massively distinct character, but it seems to come in useful more and more and more and more, because it's just very versatile. But they're €1,000. It's got some very, very cool things. It can do like full stereo from a single mic, and it's got the app and the Bluetooth thing, but it's a lot of money. So they've now released the OC16, which is a proper cardioid condenser with their new capsule for €350. So you can essentially buy 3 of these for the cost of one OC818. So if you are cost limited, if you are budget conscious, that could be an absolute contender for you. So it's a ceramic capsule, which apparently is kind of like brass capsules, but more consistent than ever, and actually affordable to make. Then yeah, you can get 1 or 2. It comes with a regular mount and a shock mount as well, so that's not bad. And it comes with a high pass, which is either 40 Hz just to get rid of the tappy rumble, or 160 Hz, which isn't a sharp cutoff by what I've been reading. It's just enough that if you've got this on a something where you need it to not have super duper low end hitting the preamp, that could be really useful. And yeah, because it's got a flat body, you can, even Austrian Audio have shown this hanging over a cab, which is what I used to do that with the Sennheiser 906 and 609, because that's a really useful feature of them, is they're a fairly flat sounding dynamic mic that you can just sling over a cab, and it just sits out of kicking range. And on a lot of stages, being out of kicking range is pretty useful. But yeah, there's so much more to come from NAMM. It's going to be a lot, and I'm going to try my best to get the jump on it and get ahead of it. But for now, that is the news. The news. Poor laptop is absolutely struggling trying to play those transitions, but bless it, it's trying. And yes, as you can see, the sun has gone down here over Nerja in Spain, and I still have my beer. But yes, if anyone's got any questions, now is a good time. I mean, not questions about the jerky camera and the massive latency, but it looks like the skippy hoppity jumpy stuff has stopped, and we're getting a much smoother camera. He says as it stops.
Yeah, it does definitely look a bit smoother. A little bit.
Van Dien says he read that everyone's waiting for the firmware for the Rode. They can't use it till it arrives. Someone said it was leaked before it was supposed to be. Whoops. Yeah. Oh dear. Well, early leaks are always slightly awkward. I mean, yeah, we had early firmware for the Evo 16 that didn't have half of the features in it because the hardware was ready before the software was ready, which seems to very much be the way with products like this because they have to get the hardware kind of ratified so far in advance to get them made and get them shipped that then they get the software engineers tasked with these are the things we want to do. Here's the hardware. You have 3 months while the products are on a boat. Go. Mm. And so yeah, that's a lot of that is what was happening with the Evo 16 and every other product pretty much that you can imagine. That's what happens is that the hardware's ready, the firmware is kind of there and works, but features are added, you know, right to the last minute. And actually a lot of the hardware that I have, a lot of features have been added since release. So it's an ongoing process. And something I'm always grateful for is, when companies keep working on firmware and software to bring improvements, lower CPU usage, more functionality, more fun stuff to play with. Do you remember the old Focusrite Liquid Sapphire that we used to use as the basis of our studio?
Yeah, that was like a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, and the rest.
Probably like 10 years ago, but it feels like it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, but when we first got that, it was a bit of a cow with things like latency and driver stability. And 2 years after they released it, they released new firmware and software that completely changed it and massively improved it. So
Right.
good companies do keep working. Like I said about Focusrite earlier, they're not bad people. They care. But yeah, the Sapphire range for its time was really good, but it all worked on Firewire, which is now completely discontinued. And that's the thing about the Scarlet series is when that was originally developed, it was kind of the parallel line to the Sapphire where everything was cheaper. It was known that USB was inferior at the time, so that was very much the budget range. And so then the Sapphire range died of death because Firewire died. Claret range took off because that was originally the Thunderbolt range. And then they kind of realized that they'd made themselves a premier class of interface and then just ran with that and made USB versions with those higher class converters and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, the Scarlet was just kind of always the inferior sibling. Oh, Marty asks, Evo 16 versus Apollo preamps. What do you think? I've got to say, I think Apollo preamps are flat and boring. They're not bad. They're not bad, but they're not designed to be anything other than neutral. And Evo 16s are kind of the same, a little bit more liveliness to them, but they're not designed to be like Neves or APIs or anything. They're designed to be fairly transparent. So the thing that really interests me is that the Evo preamps, to me, do sound pretty much on par with the Apollos at a far lower price point. I mean, this is real market disrupting stuff at this point. I think the ID preamps are better, but we're splitting hairs at this point, which is really interesting because 5 years ago, the difference between a budget range and a premium range would have been a gulf, and now it's like, now it really is. How far do we want to push this thing? How much difference does it really make? And yeah, it's fascinating just how close they've managed to get this at this price point. Because, like, if I could get the Evo 16 to run just as a bank of preamps, it'll sit above the Behringer, the AD 8000 or 8200. But in price point, it's almost double. But the next real kind of category of separate preamps is 700 to 800, so double price. Hello?
It's a big jump.
Big jump. Yeah. Yes. So if they can do that, then what's to stop them making preamp banks in the future at that price point? And I'm hoping that's something we'll see. Because if they do, that's another market disruptor right there. Because, there's nothing quite like disrupting markets. Any more questions for us?
A good disruptor?
Yes. Good disruptors. Yes. Klingons and Vulcans alike, love them. Yes. Anybody else got anything to ask before we disappear? Because I'm going to be shrouded in darkness any minute.
Oh, yeah, you're getting darker and darker.
Yes. Night has fallen here in Spain. And I'm about to put on my bat suit and go and save the town. Van Dien says he's seen some folks still running Sapphires in standalone mode just like that. I mean, for a while, that's what I did with the Liquid Sapphire 56. I changed the routing in the S-Mix software so that the inputs went straight out of the ADAT port and used that as extra, and then used the other way. So the ADAT in went out of the outputs. Problem is, when I then compared that to any of the other preamps that I had, it was actually not great. So, that was in comparison, and that was the best part of 10 years ago. Like I say, the quality of hardware is striding along. Yeah. I don't know if it's possible with the Evo 16s to do that with their routing software. I think it might be possible to do something with the Q mixes, but that is getting a bit hacky. And yes, Mage says, thank you for doing this during the holiday. Well, thank you, because this is a nice chill-out time for me. But yes, back to the grindstone for next week. And so that is probably a good place to call it. But yes, public service announcement. Next week's podcast is not going to be on Thursday. It's going to be on Friday, because we're doing it live from NAMM.
Live from NAMM.
Friday. So yes, I'm going to put the upcoming video thingy up as early as possible for that, so that as many people know and put word out. But yeah, that is what we're going to be doing. I wanted to do it on the Thursday, but apparently this year they're not actually open on the show floor. We'll be in the Hilton Thursday night, because that's where the press thing is. It's almost like a press junket kind of thing this year.
Okay.
So, okay. And yeah, the night before that, we're going to be at the Hollywood Artist Expo. So, yes.
So we sharing a room with Glenn?
Yes.
All three of us?
All three of us.
It's going to get sweaty.
Yeah. And then the very last night.
I think it's just going to have to be a thing. Even if you make it and become a multi-millionaire, we've just got to find someone to share one room with. There just has to be the thing now then.
Yeah. I mean, space is limited at NAMM. It just kind of is. So, yeah, there's that. I mean, we're being economical. We're looking after the environment.
And the pennies.
Absolutely. Because, it's not cheap.
No,
we're flying to America just for you.
It's crypto internet now, so I'm broke too.
Yes, that's the thing. Yes. On that note, thank you everybody for watching, and thank you. I'll see you all next week.
Wait, just before we go, how cool is it that you're going to be doing 2 podcasts back to back, 3 podcasts back to back, all from different countries? So this
very
week
cool.
and then next week. That's pretty cool. Just saying.
Yeah. It's very cool indeed, and I'm very grateful to be doing stuff like this. I can't thank all our viewers enough, because without you, this doesn't happen. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, that video. But if you fancy carrying on this conversation, we have a Discord server, link is in the description. We're also on Patreon, which is something you can really help us with. We also are on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Hop Hole Studios. See you there.